Chris Waters here for the final hour of GameSpot's live stage show Extravaganza Palooza here from the stage at E3. I said stage twice. Super on point, you guys. We've got an hour left, and most of that hour is going to be taken up by the folks to my left. They are the Indiecade folks. Sam, founder of Indiecade. Coriel and John from White Lotus Interactive. Ben, we're going to start off talking about exactly what Indiecade is before we get into your guys' game, which is set up back there. There was someone with an Oculus Rift on. I don't even know what the game is. It's going to be exciting. We're going to find out about it together. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, tweet them to me at CTWaters on Twitter or use the hashtag GameSpotE3. We'll check them out. But first, Sam, you have a lovely shirt. It says Indiecade. Beautiful color gradient. Indie games, in the past, many years have been in ascendancy, yes. Much to the delight and benefit of us all. It's been incredible to see the industry diversify in this way. And what role does Indiecade play in that?
Yeah, so the quick answer that I always like to give is that we're the Sundance of video games.
Ooh, nice.
Right? So we're the place you go to find the interesting, exciting, innovative, experimental, and artistic work that's being done in the space. Indiecade's 8 years old now. We've been showing here at E3 for all 8 of those years, and we have a yearly festival in Culver City, California, which happens in October.
In October, and you guys, indie developers are far-flung all around the world. Do you fly some in? Do you have some just sort of send their works in? How does that all work?
Yeah, so we actually run a submissions process every year for the first half of the year from late January through early June. We get submissions from developers all over the world, so that's the United States, South America, Europe. We've had submissions from Egypt. We get submissions from Korea, India, Japan, China. So we really have a pretty global reach. And our submissions have been growing astronomically year by year. I'm not sure where we'll get when submissions close. Submissions close in 3 days, but for this year, I'm guessing that we'll cross 1,000 when it's all said and done.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. And is that something that you guys surface on your website, or is that like a festival? How does that content get out there to folks?
We outreach through independent development communities, basically. We've been, like I said, going for 7 years. 7 years ago, there were a lot fewer indie devs.
Yes, there were.
So we knew all of them, and because one of the great things about the independent space is developers really support each other. A lot of new developers come from being pitched on doing indie development by guys who are already doing it in the space, and there's a lot of giving back. So as our community has sort of grown, people have just grown in awareness about the event. We also do a lot of outreach through schools. Tons of schools now offer programs in game design. Which
more and more every year,
I wish there had been when I was going to college.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But there's so many opportunities out there now, and Indiecade is just one of the places that indie developers can get their stuff showcased. Speaking of indie developers, Coriel, John, thank you guys for coming to this stage.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So you guys have submitted to Indiecade as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting story. We were surprised about this whole event. We submitted to Indiecade for the Culver City event in October, and little did we know, we received an email just saying, hey, you're coming to E3. And sure, let's do it. Yeah. So here we are.
That's a pretty awesome surprise. And we're really glad to have you guys here. So tell us about your game. What's the title?
Go ahead, Corey.
Sure. So our game is called XING: The Land Beyond. It's a first-person puzzle adventure for the PC, and we also have it on Oculus Rift.
Very cool. We see some gameplay sort of coming up now. We're not showing it in Oculus mode because it's that still that weird side-by-side kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we're getting it in all its full glory here. So it's a first-person puzzle adventure, and is this right at the beginning? I see we're sort of getting some prompts on how to go about interacting with the world.
Yeah, that's right. We made this demo so that people could learn kind of how to play the game right away before we threw them into it in the Rift. So.
All right. So what do you get? Is this one of these games where puzzle games often have mystery associated with them? Is this something where you aren't giving the player too much information and it's about discovering what's going on here, or does the player have an idea of where they are?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So in this game, we decided to take on a really heady topic. So we decided to go onto the topic of death. So in the game, you actually are dead.
That's pretty heavy.
So
Yeah.
unlike most games where you're trying to avoid death, you're actually already dead. So you don't have to worry about any of that, which is nice because in this case, when you die, you don't actually have any memories of who you were when you were alive. So you have to kind of figure out, well, who am I? Where am I? What does it mean to be dead in a way? So by going through many different environments and solving different puzzles, you can kind of understand different things about different people who you meet and stories that you go through, and hopefully learn more about yourself.
Sam, did you see those signs? Could you read those signs they had before, or was it just me? I mean, it seemed like it was not in
I think
English.
It's a special rune language that I have not studied yet, but I'm
fair
sure
enough.
I can learn somewhere.
I just didn't, I didn't want my E3 eyes to be so addled. All right, so here we say this is a statue of Tlaloc. I mean, that's an Aztec god. Yes.
Yeah,
So you guys
that's
have
correct.
been
Wow.
drawing from various mythologies in your design here.
Yes, that's true. All the different levels of Xing actually are based on different mythologies and different places around the world, different time periods. We have cool architecture for the desert. We kind of have sort of an Egyptian, Persian type theme going on, but here in our rainforest we have very Mayan, Aztec inspiration. So
Cool. All right, so chucking bananas around, is that, is there some stuff you guys are sort of laying out? You're giving clues in written form, but there's also environmental clues like this gem pedestal and this mysterious language and the moon door. So is it, in terms of the player's interaction with the world, is it a lot about experimentation?
Yeah, so our puzzle design, we've gone through a lot of different iterations, and we initially had started doing puzzles that were very akin to the old Myst series. So a lot of code breaking, a lot of numbers and whatnot, but we decided that after testing and doing a lot of VR work, we found that was a difficult thing to ask of players, especially when they're completely immersed into a brand new environment.
Yeah.
So we decided to start focusing on more environmental-based puzzles, kind of akin to the Zelda series, and even Portal to some certain extent. And going for that more of a, okay, so this button maybe raises this ladder, or if I press this button, then I can go up this elevator, or different things like that. Well, how do I get to this spot? So that's the kind of gameplay that we're going for, and it's really responded well, especially here at E3 while we're giving our demo.
I think that's a really interesting thing about VR as we start to see the Oculus and the Morpheus and sort of more developers considering how to bring their games into VR or to develop for VR. I think it's easy to think like, oh, it's just you design your game, but now you're wrapping something around your face to see the game instead of looking at a TV.
Right.
But from a design perspective, it offers significantly different challenges.
Absolutely. And I like that you said it from a design perspective. The technical challenges are a lot of them are already solved, and it's actually relatively easy to get a game into VR. But for it to be a good game in VR, that's a total different ball of wax, because there's funny things you kind of take for granted when you're looking at a game as a 3D game on a 2D screen. You don't get a sense of scale, for example. And when we initially started developing and we hadn't received our kit yet, we tried playing our game, and we found out that you're just this little munchkin and everything is huge, and it felt very, very odd. Even though it looked correct on a monitor, it was completely different in VR. So not just to mention that, there's a whole issue of controlling yourself, making sure you don't feel any out-of-body experiences, and kind of knowing where you're going, and it's definitely a challenge that we've totally accepted, and we're working with it. So,
Sam, do you guys do panels at Indiecade?
Yeah, we do. We have a full conference, actually, where we talk about sort of what's going on in the space.
I think that you should slot a panel, VR development mishaps, and turning out to be some little really
midget
tiny
stuck in a
person,
giant world.
motion sickness, just standing still,
Yeah.
like all this sort of stuff that people discover. I think it's just fascinating to see the different ways that you encounter new obstacles with this kind of new format.
Yeah, it's one of the exciting things, too, about working in the independent game space in general is everybody's really excited to jump on new technology, to experiment with it, and they try sort of everything, but that means you get a lot of really magical failures to look at, which is tons of fun.
Magical failures, that can be the name of the panel.
Exactly.
Wow, yeah. All right, so it's turned nighttime during the course of this, during the short demo, and there's all sorts of glowing stuff, and are these sort of switches you've had? Wait, All right, now it's throwing me for a loop. I have no idea what's going on.
All
now.
right, so actually what you just saw there on the screen was the we call these the time of day powers. So every different level has a different power associated that you're able to use as a player. So in this case, you can change the time of day from night to day or day to night, and different things happen in puzzle-wise, story-wise, gameplay-wise, and of course the environment changes entirely. So in this case, there's a puzzle where there's 2 different pillars, and one of them you can move at nighttime, and one you can move at daytime. So it's a simple simple toggle that you have to do to change between the 2. But later on, there's puzzles that you have to use several different powers at once and kind of go to different states, and it gets pretty complicated with a lot of different. You could be nighttime and raining and snowing and all sorts of different things.
That classic compounding of mechanics that's so integral to any puzzle game, really. Coriel, you were talking before about having sort of, in this jungle setting, having Aztec and Mayan inspiration, but clearly the art here isn't just like lifted from the textbooks or from the stela of, Mesoamerican civilizations. There's a lot of original art that you guys have created here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have our where you first go in the game is actually, so you died, right? And so the first place you go isn't one of these civilizations. It's actually this area we've called Zenith, right? It's like a point above, and but it's like this almost magical kind of heavenly sort of feeling place, and we did our own thing completely with that. I mean, we almost went a little sci-fi with all of that stuff. So as far as our architecture, and that actually flows into the rest of the game. So like everything that you interact with will either be that feeling, that style, I suppose, or it will be the style of the specific area you're in. Right
on. So, this is one sort of area that the player explores, and this is, as they discover, sort of the mystery of their life and the mystery of what death is and where they are. You mentioned a little bit before some of the other areas you'll go towards. In terms of the discoveries you make, are these written? Are these audio that you're hearing? Are you meeting people? Sort of how does that? Can you give us a glimpse as to how that plays out?
Yeah, I'll give you a tiny. So the way the story is told, other than visually, is it's told through poetry that's scattered throughout, and there's different styles of poetry, and the styles connect with the lands and with the times. And like here we have the poetry for Talak, so the skies, they rise, right? And what he's trying to explain is he ends up trying to explain his life and like what he went through and kind of how he died. And once you learn more and more about his story, you start learning more and more about your story. So all of the stories are actually kind of intertwined, they're kind of connected, but you have to put the pieces together.
Literally and figuratively, I guess. Very cool. So there's also a lot of ambient stuff happening. You've got these sort of floating moats. You've got flowers blooming and butterflies flitting here and there. Are there other environments that aren't quite so lush?
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. One of my
definitely.
favorite environments that we were designing is the volcano level, so to speak. And that, of course, is
the lava
fire
world.
and brimstone.
Always got to have a lava world.
It's the lava level. Of course, we're trying to do a new take on that, of course, and I'm not going to reveal any secrets.
Sure.
But there is a volcano level, and it is very cool. So, but yeah, the environments we are going for a very peaceful environments. We want players to feel comfortable in their settings, but we do want to give that fantastic element, and there's definitely a lot of variety. So
very neat. Sam, can you talk to us a little bit about how, these guys told us how they got the call and the invite to come to E3. This indicates sort of festival curation process is already underway.
Yeah, so what happens is, as I said, we take submissions from sort of January to 3 days from now. Those are submitted through our website, and we have a very large jury, and that jury is made up in large part of former developers who've shown in the event, but also journalists, industry experts, academics, people who are related in doing games work. And we're already jurying a bunch of those games. That whole jury process is funneled toward and focused on the October Festival. But at the October Festival and throughout the year, we do other showcases of games. And for those showcases, myself and the jury chairs and the festival chair, Celia Pierce, who is another founder of the event, sort of go through and we make subsets of the submitted games that we think are appropriate. So we have a deadline. It's like if you submit before here, you could be considered for E3.
Okay.
And then we read all of those entries and say, this chunk of those entries might be really good for E3. And that gives us like 100, 120 games. We play all of those games and decide which 25 to 30 we're bringing here to E3 and contact the developers. We do that same process for the other showcases. So at the festival itself, in addition to the games that are selected by the jury, we do a showcase of board games, a showcase of mobile games, and those kinds of things. For that, we pull out, again, a subset of like 100 games that would be appropriate for that showcase and have the judges or the curator consider those and decide.
And here I thought I played a lot of games.
I play more games than almost everyone.
So what can you give us a little bit of an analysis of what was it about Xing that struck you that sort of made it good for E3, but also that, good for a showcase? What do you like about it?
So I can sort of tell you a little bit of how the process works. When we're examining the entries to look for what's appropriate for E3 or for any showcase, we want to get a nice balance. We want to highlight, indicates all of that innovation, experimentation, and artistry. So we want to find games that are going to highlight that, but be attractive to the audience that we're curating for. E3 is a very industry-focused audience, so we look for stuff that plays to the industry, but also shares Indiecade. When it comes to Xing, that meant when we were looking through entries, I was deeply impressed just at first glance by the screenshots and by the Oculus. And I was like, this is a beautiful-looking game. It's very attractive. Maybe it's going to also be good and an Indiecade game, and then something we can show. So then it goes into the pile of stuff we consider, right? And then when we played it, me and a few other judges played it, looked at it, and said, you know what, in addition to being really beautiful and being something that's going to appeal to the media and industry at E3, it also shares our values. It's innovating in content. It's presenting a different approach to what a game can be. It's about exploration and puzzles and sort of philosophical reflection rather than necessarily shooting somebody else or something like that.
There's a distinct lack of headshots so far in Xing, although there's a lot of durian wrangling or whatever fruit that is.
Durian, right.
Which is very dangerous also.
Yeah,
those
they
things are
smell
heavy and
very
spiky.
bad.
And smelly.
And smelly. All right, so this isn't the only Indiecade game you brought along, Sam, for us to show. So we're going to get a new one on here to check out. But Coriel and John, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about Xing, showing it off. Do you guys have a plan for release? For when people can sort of get their hands on it and try it out?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're looking at releasing this year, so towards the end of the year, look for it. I mean, you can find us online. It's www.xingthegame.com. That's X-I-N-G.
That's, Xing with an X.
Yeah, with an X.
Very cool. Thank you guys again so much.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break, get some more developers up on here, and keep talking awesome indie games. Stay with us.